أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Oh, sorry, we didn't see it here. So, this is our second session on contemplating on Qur'an and then contemplating with Qur'an on other stuff. If you can come up with a better title, happy to change it. I don't know, just came up with this in a short notice. Anyway, so last week we started, like in this new series, let's say, we are trying to get to know what Qur'an is so that we can benefit from Qur'an accordingly. I was thinking about it today. So, for instance, even if you are the child of a very knowledgeable person, generally this person for you is just daddy. And you take him that serious. But students of your father, for example, would just say, oh, he is like a great teacher. And then he's not only a great teacher of a certain science, but then somebody else would say, well, he's also very good at arts. You can learn arts or get his taste of arts. Then he's also a very good cook. Oh, then we can talk to him about food and cooking as well. So this person starts becoming more than just daddy. So this is why it's important to ask the question, what is Qur'an, so that I can benefit from Qur'an from various different perspectives. And in our first session, we were asking the question of what Qur'an is. There came some answers, but the more we can populate this description, the more we can benefit from Qur'an, because in the life, many things are happening to us, and there are different facets of life. So what does Qur'an has to say to them? Because maybe it never occurs to me that I should consult with Qur'an for a certain problem in my life, because Qur'an is not related to that in my perception. So this is why having those aspects of Qur'an refined and exemplified would be beneficial. And our goal in here is to go through Imam Nursi's description of what is Qur'an, and we will try to come up with examples of how we can relate to those descriptions too. Last week, we went through a long list of descriptions. I'm not going to show them again, but these are the first three, and we started discussing the first one last week. So, and the description was the Quran is the pre-eternal translation of the mighty book of the universe. The second description, which we will study today, is the post-eternal interpreter of the various tongues, reciting the verses of creation. And a third one, probably, which would be discussed next week, it's the commentator of the book of the worlds of the seen and unseen. So for this one, the first description, let's remember what were the bits and pieces. So we were discussing about why pre-eternal, what does pre-eternal mean, and how is that different than eternal. This was one of the points we discussed. And when we were referring to eternal, first of all, just a very quick recap, eternal meaning it's beyond time. Because I am in need of of course, we started from the book of, whether it's first a book. But if I go with the sentence order, so a translation of a book being done, let's consider Quran, for example. If we would be considering translation or interpretation of Quran that was made in 13th century versus a translation or interpretation that's made today, would the two be the same? No, because the translator would be a person of their time who has a knowledge of, let's say, the time before that person comes, but more so affected by the last 50 years or so, and speaking to people of his own age, and maybe, if that's a far-sighted person, for the next 50 years. But if you consider the fast pace of time, how it's changing nowadays, maybe that translation is going to be very relevant for 20 years. 20 years later, new problems will arise and whatnot. So, but the Quran, being a pre-eternal translator or translation, means the one who is interpreting or translating this book, which is the book of universe, is beyond time. So the translation, which Quran now is the translation of the book of universe, is a relevant translation for you no matter where you live, when you live. This was the emphasis. There was a question about what's the distinction between pre-eternal and post-eternal and whatnot. I will save this for today's discussion. Then we talked about why it's a translation. But of course, let's go from the bottom. The book of universe. Is it a book? Is the universe a book? Can the universe be considered a book? What are the similarities between a book and the universe? And we talked about this in the light of verses and how Quran is reading, because a book is a very well-ordered flow of ideas made into chapters. The other day, my wife was talking about a series which is adapted from a novel. She made an interesting comment. She said that it is clear that this series is adapted from a novel, because in a novel, the author knows from beginning to end everything is set once, and once it's adapted into a series, there's no twists that changes over time. But once they start a new series, for example, they don't know where it's going to. Over time, they tend to change stuff. So the first season is good, but the second season starts getting awkward because they make decisions down the road and it just starts getting awkward. So the book of universe being designated as a book is the author was aware of the last sentence when he was writing the first sentence, or it's such a coherent structure. So is the universe such a book? Becomes a question. But we talked about examples of this in the previous session. And these were one of the examples were from Surah Yasin, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا, like there are signs for you. The word ayah is being used, and we refer to this concept of using ayah in Quran, both for the verses of Quran and also verses of the universe. And then there was this اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Like once you establish the universe as a book, then if you go back to the first verse that was revealed, read in the name of your Lord, and no book was there at the time, or even this is just the thing that's being revealed to the messenger. What am I supposed to read? Then human is being mentioned, creation of human. So Quran is mentioning human as the verses of this book. That was a very quick recap of what we discussed last week. Let's go with this week's discussion. Now it is post-eternal translator of the various tongues reciting the verses of creation. So this is similar to the previous sentence, but the descriptions are using different words. This time, again, there's some allusion to the universe being a book, but this time a post-eternal is used rather than pre-eternal. So this should tell me something about a different aspect of Quran. In this case, it's using translator rather than translation. Like Quran being a translation was what we discussed last week. Now, what does it mean that Quran is a translator? How can I take it when it's a translator? And then it's saying various tongues. In the previous one, there was a clear or explicit mention of a book. Now it's like a various tongues. Yes.
Where are these descriptions? Are these descriptions by Moses?
Yeah, these are descriptions from. Yeah. These are from his descriptions. But what these descriptions highlight, and we will eventually go and look for examples in the Quran, because he took those descriptions per his reading of Quran. But let's first try to understand, like, what those different things mean. Because at the end of the day, what we are trying to see here is, if somebody says, Birkan is a good cook, let's say I come here and I claim you that Birkan is a good cook, and also is a good scientist. I mean, of course, I shall point to you his cooking skills and his science skills. I mean, if he doesn't have it, by me just saying it doesn't mean anything. But if I can distinguish what science is and what cooking is, and what makes somebody a good cook and good scientist, then you should say, well, let me consider, because, yeah, I want to have a good food, and I am in need of a good scientist. So here is someone who studied Quran deeply and comes up with a description. So these are the questions that I have in mind. Then there's this various tongues reciting. Who is it that is reciting? Do you see anybody reciting anything in this universe? And then verses of creation. What is verses of creation? How many types of verses do we have? Anything that you would like to take among any of those questions? Yes.
Maybe for the first part, in terms of like distinguishing it from the previous description, I feel like this is more active, like the translator. This is translation. So in the previous description of the pre-eternal translation, we were looking at the Quran as this book, which I guess if you consider a book, it's like written, it's already there as a standard or a reference, whereas here it seems to be more so talking about like an active speech where various like it says various tongues are continuously reciting, and it's actively translating those recitations.
Yep, very good. Yes.
On this note, it feels like present tense, like it's actively a translator as opposed to a translation, which is something that typically has been done in the past. And it just makes me feel like in the sense post-eternal means like from now until forever. So it's like it's gonna be a translator forever.
Very good. Very good. 2 points actually. Yes. So in the first description, when the book was explicit, but now that it's talking about reciting tongues and it's a translator, so Quran is not only a static text, but it's like a live speech. And Quran itself becomes like an active agent that is actively translating to you. Because if it is like a book is sort of a passive. I mean, this is a level of understanding for sure. You can consider Quran as a book, and it tells universe as a book, and Quran is a translation of this book. This is definitely conveying a message to me. I mean, better than universe being a random act of laws or, I don't know, things. Considering the universe as a book means, no, there's an order, and a book has an author. Like once you use the concept of book for universe, book comes with an author. Book comes with an order. Like these are the automatic ideas that comes with it. And if you consider in today's day and age, how do you look at the universe? It's just a plaything of chance. Like there is a book, there's a plaything of chance. Like this is a giant distinction, first of all, as Quran is putting before us. But now we are looking at it as various tongues reciting verses of creation, and Quran is a translator of this. So the universe becomes various tongues of verses of creation that are reciting. And Quran is an active agent, an active translator of this to me, which means I can interact with it. I can ask questions and it's going to translate it to me. And that translation happens in between two languages. So someone who, like a translator, must know the source language well and the destination language well to convey the idea seamlessly, because in different cultures, different words mean different things. So Quran is going to translate it to which language? Human language? But which human language? To Atik's language. By here, I mean Atik as a human being. I'm not meaning Bengali or English. It's not necessarily Quran is translating the recitations in the universe, in the existence, to the Arabic language. Not necessarily. I mean, we can say that, sure. That's one way to take it. But apart from that, since it's a translator, how can I take this any further, as it's an active translator? Because it depends, really, what you expect from that translator. If it is, oh, it translates it to Arabic, and, well, I don't speak Arabic, then I got stuck there. Or am I going to say that, no, it is translating it to every individual's world as well? Let's say somebody says, well, Atik is misbehaving. His mom calls me and says that, well, although I told him this 100 times, 1,000 times, he doesn't understand. But you talk his language well, meaning you communicate well with him. You know which door to enter to Atik's world. Could you please convey this message in a proper language that will make sense to him, that will stick to him? So it will stick to him with a stick. So, yeah.
Question that doesn't have to be answered immediately, but how would, like, what's the case, or how would you explain the case of when I misunderstand Quran? Like a bad interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I honestly understood, like I genuinely understood this, but let's say it's probably not. And it's a bad advice. Yeah. It's a bad advice. Okay.
Let me unpack that question. When Quran says it is a clear message, sometimes there happens an expectation that a clear message is a message which should be like stop at red light. In how many different ways can you interpret stop at red light? Actually, it should be as simple as possible, so that when people see the red light, oh, what does this mean? Does it mean that actually you can hit the gas pedal? I mean, it should be straight and clear so that since you're addressing billions of people, they are trying to make it as simple as possible, right? So when Quran is a clear message, do I expect Quran to be a list of clear instructions as such? Sometimes this is what it boils down to for a certain perspective. Let's hold that. Okay. On the other hand, let's look at human life. How complex is human life? Because we are talking about a Quran which has 6,000 some sentences in it. And I'm expecting Quran to enlighten my life, the entire existence, with those 6,000 some verses or sentences. If my expectation from Quran is that it's going to be as clear as stop at red light and no other meaning, that's it. Like stop at red light means stop at red lights. What do you seek further in here? Then something goes wrong in there. Like it doesn't make sense. There would have to be that, yes, there's going to be an apparent meaning of a verse, and then there are going to be multiple further meanings in every single sentence of Quran. Within the description and the purpose of Quran, though, I need to put a parenthesis there. It's not like you can interpret it as you wish. There are going to be limitations of that interpretation. This is from theoretical point of view. Practically speaking, if you look at how West Islamic knowledge have happened since the Quran is revealed, we can then say that, yes, this Quran is being understood hundreds of thousands of different rich ways. And people do have agreements and disagreements about, oh, this verse means this. The other one would say, maybe, but this other meaning as well. So what happens? Your question, I'm trying to locate your question in this setup now, because you are now putting some effort to understand Quran, and this putting effort part, I would like to underline. And you are genuinely trying to understand it, and genuinely in this case should mean that you're putting the necessary effort to knock the doors that would help you in this understanding, such as messenger, such as your conscience, such as reading Quran along with the universe, because they are speech of the same creator, right? You can cross-reference creation and the book of creation and Quran to confirm your understanding. Yet you understood something, and then you come and I understood something else from the same verse. Now we have a conversation. At the end of this conversation, if I can show you that this clearly is a contradiction, then you would say, well, thank you, you're right. If I couldn't show you a clear contradiction, like your understanding seems to be fitting within the purposes of Quran, then I would say this could be one meaning of the verse. But up until getting to this conclusion, this is what we do in life. Like anything, you try your best judgment, and once you realize that it was wrong, you do your repentance. This is why, like, this repentance applies to anything, actually. Like, this gentleman over there has 2 daughters, and he is trying to raise his daughters to the best of his judgment. 3 years later, like, even if you ask him, like, he was very carefully raising his first daughter, because he was making a comment like this over the weekend. In the second daughter or second children are freer. And Birkan's wife was making a comment saying that the first children are being raised with full control. Then you realize, but it was not an ill will. You thought this is what was necessary. In the second child, you're being a little laid back, saying that the creator is taking care of it. Maybe I didn't need. So you are correcting your wrong understanding if you're open to. So this is, by design, this is how a human is supposed to be. So you will definitely misunderstand something. But as long as you're open to correction, this is where repentance is going to come into the picture. And as Sahabi said this to prophets, saying that when we are together with you, we are being totally different. Once we leave your congregation, like we are becoming us, normal us. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned them that if you were always like this, God would annihilate you and create someone who would sin and then repent. So this is part of being human. It will happen. But being open to the idea that this is what I understood today, and I am trying my best to understand it properly. But tomorrow, if Birkan comes and says, Yusuf, you're wrong, then I'll say, let's sit together and explain me why I am wrong. I should be open, you should be open, so we will have this conversation. And at the end, I should be open to say that, astaghfirullah, so seeking cleansing of my creator from this wrong understanding. Yes.
To correct you.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah, this is going so well. Like we studied it, I don't know how many times we're opening this morning. So then tying back two things, like the pre-eternal, post-eternal distinction that you guys discussed with this question, maybe. With the first, the description, then the emphasis was in the orderly created, orderly written thing, the book, something established in front of all, in our eyes. And when we say something is established, orderly fashion, it is already a past tense, right? Like it is done this way by someone who knew everything before and so on. So it makes sense. The pre-eternal was used there. But when we switch our attention to this well-established thing being a living organism, changing all the time, it's not just well-established, but it's being established every single time. Then the emphasis is on the living part, the high part, right? So then again, it makes sense. The translation became translator because it's a living thing now. And then the pre-eternal became post-eternal. Now they are connected. It's not like a distinction, but the two ends of the same thing. Now our focus is on the living. Everything in your life is constantly changing in a well-established order every time. And then its translation also by the translator is changing as well, right? So then tying all this to your question, when we take Quran as what is it called, legislation? Yeah, a book of legislation, it's something static. And you have to be very concerned whether what you say is to the book or not. Like you try to understand Quran, you make an error, you kind of done, like because it's wrong and it has a fixed meaning anyway, right? But when you take your life and its translator as a living thing, the emphasis is now on the experience that you have through that. Even when you make an error, it is still an error, as Yusuf explained, but even you making an error is part of the experience. You make an error, this error, let's say, hurts you or causes you some, the discomfort, whatever. Like it cannot be out of within vacuum. If you make an error, there must be an indication of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't call it as an error anyway, right? If everything goes, you wouldn't see any indication of anything. You are making an error, it leading you, quote unquote, astray. You having the difficulty, you turning back and saying that I was wrong, has become the part of the experience. And it is, again, translated by Quran. When you read the verse about the people who make wrong, and then, what was the word?
Repent.
Repent. Right? This ayah now, repentance ayah, is now translating. So, yeah, there are errors, but they are not that end anymore. Making an error is part of your life, living experience. So you wouldn't be scared of putting an effort to understand Quran.
And that's important because, I mean, sometimes out of respect with good intention, maybe, but Quran is becoming so inaccessible. So, I mean, there is this fear of, interpreting in the way that I wish, and I do not trust my wishes. Therefore, I shy away from getting into this territory. I mean, it's a good point, being afraid of your wishes. But on the other hand, if this is leading me not to engage with Quran, then it's hurting me. So it is like I am afraid of being failure in earning my life, so I better stay at home, not get into any sort of earning livelihood. So, I mean, yes, definitely you will, if it is a trade, yeah, your first, second, third jobs are going to be a failure maybe, but the fourth one, this is how you learn. So engaging in Quran, as long as I have a concern, then knowing that I will, and I can and I will make mistakes, enter there and try to learn. Is there any comment there? No? Okay. So let's read some examples. Are there any comments you would like to make? We can pick up on examples for the rest. So I have a couple of examples. Okay. So one of the biggest words that jump out from this description to me is various tongues reciting the verses of creation. So verses of creation in the original language, he uses the word ayat tekwiniyya. There are two speeches of the creator. One is the book written in text. The other one, like speech of God as Quran. The other one is speech of creation. So تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض ومن فيهن وإن من شيء إلا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحهم إنه كان حليما غفورا. This is a verse from Surah Al-Isra and verse number 45. The seven heavens and the earth and all beings therein declare his glory. There is not a thing but celebrate his praise, and yet you understand not how they declare his glory. Verily he is oft forbear, most forgiving. So this sentence is, I mean, although in here it says all beings therein wa man fihin, uses man, yusabbihu lahu samawatu sab'a. So there are other verses with the same format which uses ma in there as well, whatever in between. Like some men in Arabic, this word over here is used for who, but ma is used for what. So the same sentence appears sometimes in here with who, in other places with what.
When it is with what, though, is it again about the tasbih?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because at Drexel, 10 days ago, we were studying tasbih, like subhanallah, and there are the same phrase, sabbaha lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard, for example, sabbaha or tusabbihu, yusabbihu. This phrase as it is appears in multiple places. So in slightly different forms. In here it is tusabbihu lahu samawati sab'u wal ardu. In other places, sabbaha lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard, for example. Sabbaha ma fi samawati. In there it's ma rather than ma. So in here, for example, what does the verse declare? Everything in the heavens and the earth is declaring his glory. But you do not understand their glorification. So when I hear this shouldn't be, as probably we discussed this in these discussions before, this is not to intimidate me, saying that they do glorify, but you do not understand and you can never understand. The point is not to say that you can never understand. Because if this was the case, then what's the point of mentioning it to me? Just to tell me how stupid I am? Or is it considering the purpose of Qur'an, which is to be a guidance to me? If a teacher tells me something like this, saying that everything in here glorify, like showing me a piece of art and saying that, oh, in this piece of art, there are so many details that tells us about its artist. Like imagine you go to art museum. That's how I am. When I go to art museum, I see a painting and I say that, well, it's just a nice nature picture. But the guy who's sitting next to, and sometimes in art museums, there are people who sit next to a piece and says, ask me about it. There are so many details in here which you are not aware of. Actually, the painter tells a lot of things in here. The guy is not telling this to me to say that how stupid I am, but trying to raise my awareness and saying that ask me about it and I'll tell you. So in here, Quran is mentioning 7 heavens and the earth and all beings therein, putting, if you like, both ends of the spectrum, whatever you see in a sense. Declare his glory. There is not a thing where in min shay'in illa yusabbihu bihamdihi. And actually in here, this is shay is used. There's not even a single thing which doesn't glorify him. وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. And yet you understand not how they declare his glory. إِنَّهُ كَانَ حَلِيمًا غَفُورًا. But tying it with this last piece, saying that indeed he is oft forbear, like Halim means somebody who is not harsh, like soft-hearted people, being kind and easygoing with people, right? Halim. So despite this, me not understanding it, the Creator is saying that he is Haliman Ghafuran. Maybe this also goes back to what Natalia was asking. It's forgiving. So I stand before this piece of art and I just treat it as if it is just a nice nature picture. Says, okay, I'll forgive you for your misunderstanding or ignoring many of the understandings in here. Potentially there are many more meanings, but you are being like looking at it from very distant. This is why you're not seeing the meaning in there, but I'm forgiving with this. And I'm going to be easygoing with you, meaning come to me, ask me, and I'll tell you. So this is how Quran is opening the scene with this verse to me. I mean, this is an exemplary verse, inviting, saying that you don't know their tongues, but I'm here to teach you their tongues. Any comments? I have other verses as well. This was to open the stage. So then comes 2 prophets. One of them is like a father and a son, Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam, David and Solomon from Quran. Both of them are mentioned in an interesting way. So the part that I would like to mention starts from here. So, and remember our servant David, the man of strength, for he ever turned to Allah. Like awab means the one who turns toward the Creator. But him being awab he is constantly turning to the Creator. This is an interesting part. Let me pause here. What does this remind you? Somebody turning to the Creator. Yes. Tawbah. What does that mean? If you open it up a little more, like it's the same word, awab, tawbah, same word. Okay.
like back to figure out you're doing something.
Okay. So why would you turn to creator? Like where else you can turn to? Other things?
Assistance, like maybe if I do something wrong or I need help with something, I'll turn to my mom or like my boss or other people, like friends, like help me out with this problem. But maybe I should be turning to the one who made this problem for me and knows like what I need to be doing to the way forward.
Might not be the best example, but just to some anecdotal memory from past. So in Sufi tradition, they explain, like if they're asked what is Sharia, what is Tariqa, what is Haqiqa. Like Sharia and Haqiqa means the truth. So, and they give an example. They say, let's assume you are taking a wudu in the mosque and somebody comes and gives you a slap. You standing up and giving the guy a slap back is Sharia. Like this is your rightful thing. They slap you and you slap them. So in Tariqa, the guy gives you a slap and you turn and look who was the guy and then like don't reciprocate it. When it comes to Haqiqa, the truth, the guy gives you a slap, you do not even turn because you know where the slap comes from. Like you turn to your creator saying that eventually my creator willed this to happen. I mean, okay, some guy also willed it, but their will was a wrong will, but my creator's will, and I'm looking at my creator's will aspect of this slap. I mean, of course, it has a connotation in the Sufi tradition, but just from there, I'm borrowing the idea of turning to your creator. Because there are aspects of a thing, but to which aspect do I look at? Do I look at, like the guy did it, and then I hit back? And I mean, rightfully, I am seeking justice. This has a place. And it's not wrong. But then still, I can say, oh, the guy did it, but I forgive, sort of the other aspect. Or I can say that everything has an aspect that looks to its maker, its creator. And especially seeing it as a book, what was the purpose of the author? Because in a story, there are, like in a novel, let's say, there are characters that fight with each other during the story and whatnot. You can get lost in the story and start growing animosity towards, I don't know, certain Lord Voldemort, or you can abstract yourself and say that what does the author trying to say with this personality, this other personality? So constantly you are in a conversation with the author rather than being enemies of these imaginary personalities that are being depicted. So Dawood alayhi salam being constantly turning to his creator, meaning whatever is happening in life, he was looking where it is coming from, rather than getting lost in the events themselves. إِنَّا سَخَّرْنَا الْجِبَالَ مَعَهُ يُسَبِّحْنَ بِالْعَشِيِّ وَالْإِشْرَاقِ. With him, we had subjected the mountains that they join him in celebrating Allah's glory, evening and morning. What an interesting picture. Have you seen pictures of people praying around Kaaba? Like it's like a total circle. In your imagination, just widen the circle. Like in America, we are part of a circle, and if the circle keeps growing around Kaaba, you can, in your imagination, see people shoulder to shoulder around Kaaba. Dawood alayhi salam was having his prayer as if with mountains. And mountains are, again, you can imagine it to be covering the horizon. So it's a different type of shoulder to shoulder creatures. So he is performing his prayer or glorification with the mountains. Understand, because when you say Allahu Akbar, the people behind you understand the language and then they go to prostration together with you. Can you speak the tongue of mountains to say Allahu Akbar so that they recite Allahu Akbar with you and go to prostration together? Can you do that? So this is what, yeah.
Why is it that the mountains are subjected to join him? Why isn't it that he's joining the mountains?
Very good. Why do you think? Mountains are subjected to him. That's a very good observation. وَسَخَّرْنَا الْجِبَالَ مَعَهُ. Very good point. Like, yeah.
And I guess once you turn to or understand the Creator, He will move your environment to meet you.
Okay.
Yeah, would humans be like higher because they have the option to, not do it? And the mountains, like only they only speak that one tongue. They speak good and they praise the Creator.
Dawood alayhi salam in here is I'm very correct. You have a comment? Zareen has a comment there. Something trying to go out.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like in terms of women's role as
Yeah.
like representing everything and everyone, like applications or phrases, like in circles that they have in this when it's in like the first person, like we.
Yes.
And then I was also just it reminded me of where it says like if like we had sent down the Quran on like a mountain.
Yep. Yeah. Very, very good points. Very good points. So, and we can actually take Adam alayhi salam's story to here as well, because in Adam alayhi salam's story, everything was asked to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam. Everything in this existence is subjugated to human. What does this mean? In here, actually, it's representing who you are or who you are supposed to be human. This is your responsibility. Everything prostrates to the Creator, but you are given the duty of being a imam in this congregation because you are made different, as Natalia was mentioning. You are given with more tools. You not only recognize your own glorification, you are given the tools to recognize their glorification as well. So Dawood alayhi salam was made aware of it, which means you can be made aware of it. That's why he is being shown to you as an example here. So recognize that you are given this ability to recognize not only your own glorification, but also the glorification of the mountain. And this brings a responsibility to you. Take their glorification, join it to yours, and present it to your Creator. As Sister Zareen was mentioning in Surah Fatiha, when we say we worship you, to you alone we worship. And from you alone we seek help. This we in there means or includes mountains as well. وَالطَّيْرَ مَحْشُورَةً كُلٌّ لَهُ أَبْوَابٌ. And the birds assembled, all were turning unto him. Keeping, actually from birds, I will take you to the next verse, because in Sulaiman alayhi salam, the Creator would say, we taught him the tongue of birds. Let's go there and continue from there. And this was for Surah As-Sad, verse number 17 to 19. And this is his son, Solomon, Sulaiman. وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانُ دَاوُودَ. And Solomon succeeded David and said, وَقَالَ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ عُلِّمْنَا مَنْطِقَ الطَّيْرِ وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْمُبِينُ. O people, we have been taught the speech of birds, and we have been endowed with all kinds of things. Surely this is a conspicuous favor from Allah. It's a huge favor of Allah. Are you taught the tongue of birds? What should I expect from Quran when I read story of Sulaiman alayhi salam? I can read it as just an ancient story, and it's talking about a superhuman which is taught the tongue of birds, and he used birds in his army. Very nice. What am I going to make out of this story for myself here? I can, like, وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانَ دَاوُودَ, Sulaiman inherited Dawood. Can you inherit Sulaiman? This should be my question. What did Dawood inherit from his father? If I read it as kingdom, because his father was a king, now he became a king. But the verse doesn't mention anything about kingdom here. His father was, like in the previous verse, his father was having mountains and birds in his circle of remembrance, dhikr. Now his son also has birds in his circle. This is what he inherited. Can you inherit this, having birds in your dhikr circle? Yes.
It's interesting. I didn't realize it before. Like what it said. It says, وَقَالَ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ. So he's talking to the people. He's not saying that وَقَالَ قَوْمِي, or it's like all my nation, all my circle. All people, including you, brothers, everyone. And then ulimna, like we've been told, right? The speech of birds and so on and so forth. So all people, humankind, we've been taught. So it's not talking about let's say, a miraculous nation or miraculous people.
For individual, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Individuals, yeah.
Yeah. Because he doesn't say I was taught, we were taught. And this we, as you were mentioning, can go all the way back to the humanity. Like potentially, like we are taught, you, all human, can be taught the tongue of birds as well. Sometimes we are getting carried away with stories in Quran. This is why I would like to emphasize the importance of this study. Stories of Quran, if I take them just as stories, I can. But if I take them just as stories, this is where it's going to be a huge loss. Because then it becomes a person who was attacking another nation with, in Surah An-Naml, in following verses, in his army there were humans, jinn, and birds. Like human and jinn, okay, jinn is a little mystical, but sounds like they are like a secret weapon. But birds, like what sort of an army you are now talking about having birds in there? Like at least put some elephants or something. So it starts becoming interesting if I simply take it as literally story. If I read it as guidance for myself, though, as it applies to me, then Sulaiman alayhi salam will teach me how to make out of bird's tongue. And I'll conclude with the following verse, but before this, as an example for this birds, if anybody would like to share anything from bird's tongue. So,
I'd like to share what I don't understand what bird tongue.
okay.
Like we can read this as, literally understanding what a bird tells to another bird and so on, which is a possibility, like a study it anyway. There's a science just dedicated for that. But reading in light of the previous verses and what, like turning to Allah and so on, it is obvious that here is talking about we've been told how birds glorified their maker. We've been taught how to worship together within the circle of birds.
And especially in Sulaiman alayhi salam's story, there's going to be a specific bird, Hudhud, and he will deliver a message to a queen, a letter in the name of Allah, not in the name of the king Sulaiman. And then he will come back and tell what he sees and how he glorifies the creator. And he's going to use a phrase, they were worshiping gods other than the extractor of the hiddens. So a bird knows its creator as the one that extracts, the one that knows the hidden things. So what do we learn, for example, from this story? When I see a bird like a woodpecker goes to the tree and starts hitting and finds the worm and takes it out. Where did you know where this worm was? As a human being, I'm not able to. Like it was hidden under the shell bark of the tree. As a smart human being, I'm not able to. So, bird, how did you figure out where it's hidden? So, what shall I say? What does the bird tell me? There exists someone who is teaching me where this is. Or, like, if you consider the chapter about named bee, what do elephants? So what do we make out of this? So Quran is teaching me their tongues, how they glorify their maker. At this moment, actually, I should pause because my statement might sound like I'm just exaggerating, but even when it is mentioned, I should pause and ask, really? I thought this was just natural. Because woodpeckers, since they can find worm, they didn't get naturally eliminated out. The ones that are able to find stayed behind. Like there's no teacher, no nothing. This is the way we used to think about. But when it becomes a tick getting into my house and exactly knowing where I put my gold reserves, stash, and find it and go away, I say, well, that's why when such a thing happens, they start, like in robberies, especially in Turkey, they start from family friends because they see that, well, nothing is taken out of this house, just the gold. Like it must be someone who knows where it was. So when it comes to gold, we know where to look for it. But when it comes to worms in the tree, then we start cooking up stories. And this is my concluding verse for today. This is another chapter named with thunder, Ra'ad. It is who shows you the lightning, a fear and a hope, and raises the heavy clouds. وَيُسَبِّحُ الرَّعْدُ بِحَمْدِهِ, and the thunder hymns his praise. وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ مِنْ خِيفَتِهِ, so do the angels for awe of him. وَيُرْسِلُ السَّوَاعِقَ فَيُصِيبُ بِهَا مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَهُمْ يُجَادِلُونَ فِي اللَّهِ وَهُوَ شَدِيدُ الْمِحَالِ. He launches the thunderbolts and strikes with them whom he will, while they dispute concerning Allah. He is mighty in wrath. Now this verse is talking about, it's not only birds and mountains, it's also thunder that praises the Creator. do I hear, I mean, of course, you guys do hear thunder, but do you hear the glorification of the thunder? How it glorifies the Creator? It sounds just like a crashing sound. But ask the question, why is there a sound in the first place? Does there have to be a sound? Like imagine you are making a cartoon and two things hit each other in a cartoon. Do they make a sound there? You add a sound effect on top of those cartoons, aren't you? Like nothing necessitates that there's going to be a sound there. So why is the specific sound of thunderous, like a mighty sound is added in a thunder? But when it comes to rain, there's this like a merciful sound of as if knocking your door, a merciful sound. The sound of rain is merciful, but the sound of thunder is not. There is a notion of wrath in there. It tells a message, if I try to understand this. And actually this Yushu Sahaba Thiqal in here gives me some clues. Like he raises, or he builds actually, in Shah, he builds the heavy clouds. Apparently angels are being in awe after seeing this. Am I being in awe when I see those heavy clouds being carried with winds? What do I think about when I see clouds? Do I see that they are being built up, or they accumulate by themselves? The way that they are being purposefully taken from one place to another should tell me that this doesn't seem like it just happens to be. Somebody must be building it because there's purpose, because there are benefits. Again, when I say such a thing, the whisper comes to my ear saying, well, if it hadn't been like this, there wouldn't be life. There's no benefit actually. It just turned out to be like this, naturally. But tomorrow again, clouds are going to be lifted. What will make it tomorrow? So far, it being happening as such doesn't require that tomorrow it's going to happen the same way. Natalia is a hardworking student. Tomorrow, what forces you, like you being a hardworking student for 15 years, does not force you to work for your duty for tomorrow. It doesn't force you. You choose to be working tomorrow as well. Once I see this order, Yushu Sahaba Thiqal, these are heavy clouds. Like even a leaf, as I was walking here, I was thinking about this verse. A leaf, something as light as a leaf, falls down, but a cloud, heavy cloud, goes up. I say, well, I mean, you know, because of this, that, I say cause. But by cause, I mean just what I observe. If I reduce this, then it's like, what do they call it? Density, whatever. But the word yunshi in here is building it up, is highlighting that, don't you see that there is a purpose? Because a verb in here, especially a verb like building, because building is a purposeful act. It's not like throwing. A purposeful act is there. As much as I observe this, then I will realize that, oh, but when the two clouds hit each other, then there's this weird sound. That's not random either. It is for you to lift your head and see that I am doing something very interesting in here. Pay attention. A very huge strength I have. I carry those huge, heavy clouds here, demonstrating my might and strength. And as I hit them, because I realize that you're being oblivious, with this sound, it's saying that wake up. This sounds like when angel Israfil is being mentioned in Quran with a horn. This is one such example of hearing this horn. If you would like to make it real, more real for you what Israfil means, have you ever heard his horn? This is one example of Israfil's horn. Because this horn is being blown everywhere. One example of this horn is this thunder. Because with this thunder, what happens? The rain comes. And then in the spring, more so comes, and resurrection happens. The seeds start coming out. So the Creator is reminding me that you have seen the examples of Israfil blowing his horn and resurrection happening. Will happen for you as well. Sorry.
So the two ayahs are very nicely put, almost a hierarchical order, like capturing the human psychology. They starting from the fear and hope, the thunder, fear and hope. It's all you and your feelings, what you experience in these events, and then tying back to the awe of the Creator, the Him. I think in our day and age, what we lost, the first thing, when we see the thunder, we don't have any connection with the hope and fearing. It's just the thunder. That you need to go to your home. Yes, there is like a slight sense of fear there, but you don't think about it. You don't even realize it. You don't live it. And when you lose this sense, the connection with the reality, the rest is lost automatically anyway. Like the other day, I was talking to a friend, since it's so cold, my favorite topic, that the friend says it's so cold, and I always ask, oh yeah, it's interesting that we can feel the cold, right? So it's always received with a shock, like what I'm talking about. Because we lost that. That having the cold, how we need, somewhere warm. What it tells me, forget about the Creator. Right? Don't forget. But the moment itself, the language, like we're talking about the recitation, in order to understand what they say, first you have to see that they are saying something. Like a thunder is telling you something in your language, it means fear and hope. And then you start asking the question, what these words mean in their language, what they are telling you. So it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Any concluding remarks? So these are just a bunch of verses from Quran. There are many more verses along the same lines, which point to, and the idea we were trying to see was post-eternal interpreter or translator of the various tongues reciting the verses of creation. So let's try to see verses of creation first, like things in this existence as verses of creation. And then how do they speak? And let me try to learn their tongue as Quran is teaching me their tongue. Sometimes with the example of a bird or a mountain or a thunder or an ant. Then you can go and try to understand the language of a squirrel, which we see quite a bit in Philadelphia. So what is with which tongue does the squirrel glorify the Creator? And can I sit shoulder to shoulder with the squirrel in glorifying my Creator? سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة